Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming to our summit workshop. I'm Will Rivera, Managing Director with My Own Image, and we're here to spend 30 minutes really discussing what my own image is, why it was created, who has created it, and really having an intimate conversation with my dear friend and my boss, Susanna Gibson. So, Susanna, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Susanna Gibson. I am a nurse practitioner. I am the mother of two young children. I am the founder of My Own Image, which is a nonprofit dedicated to combating technology facilitated gendered violence, and specifically right now focused on image-based sexual abuse. And it was the 2023 Democratic nominee in Virginia for a competitive seat in the House of Delegates.
Thanks, Susanna. So everyone, I'll just really briefly introduce myself. I'm Will Rivera, again, Managing Director with My Own Image. Longtime advocate, been doing this for a very long time. Survivor advocate leader here within New York and also throughout our nation at this point. Really excited to have this intimate conversation with Susanna and really, have this conversation about what my own image is, why it was started, where we're going to go, and why are we very excited about ending image-based abuse. So Susanna, in 2023, you were running for the seat in the House of Delegates, and a private video of yours was leaked online. Could you please, share your initial reaction to this invasion of your life and how it has impacted your personal and professional life?
Oh gosh, yeah. So in 2023, September of 2023, towards the later part of the election, I found out through a reporter with a national news organization that there were intimate images and recordings of me with my husband that had been created without my knowledge and consent, and then put up and distributed on pirate user uploaded pornography sites without my knowledge and consent. This is something that I never knew existed until the national reporters started calling. And the impact of it, I think people, there seems to be a lack of knowledge with the general public and with our legislators and lawmakers about the impact and harm that non-consensual distribution of intimate images does and has on victims. So to find out that there are intimate images of you that were made, much less distributed, is profoundly violating and devastating to you as a human being, to your sense of safety in the world and your sense of bodily autonomy, really. And then to have that coupled with being I guess, targeted by the media to be able to sell stories and get clicks and earn money. To have that trauma and harm compounded on a global level really is something that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It was and still is just absolutely devastating.
Susanna, yeah, every time you tell me that story, I get more and more mad. And first, thank you for sharing, and thank you for, you know, using your energy, your space, your platform to really advocate for others and share your experience with everyone. Um, this experience that you've had, this harm that has caused you, how has this transcend your work within my own image?
Yeah, well, okay, so let's talk about the harm and the damage that's done to victims of what we call NDII. And I'm going to start using that while we speak, just for everyone's time and sanity. NDII, non consensual distribution of intimate images, or IBSA, image based sexual abuse. And we use the term somewhat interchangeably. But so, you know, what happened to me, the fallout of this, the absolute. So basically, what happened is the Washington Post decided to write about this story and wrote a very sensationalized headline. Virginia House Democratic nominee has sex online with husband for tips, or something akin to that. And wrote wrote this story in a very misleading and inaccurate way that drove traffic to these particular sites and led to, these images have been already put up on multiple user pornography sites, viewed a few thousand times. But then when the Washington Post article came out, and all of the other national and international news organizations started just kind of repeating this story without any independent verification of the facts, right? But they saw that it was getting a ton of clicks, a ton of traction, and so they just repeated it. It was on CNN numerous times. For about a week there, I couldn't turn on CNN without something about this being put up within 20 minutes of watching it. The way that it was reported on drew traffic to these sites. And now just one tweet, for example, one tweet alone has had over 5.9 million views. And that's just one person's individual tweet of an image of me. So these are images that have been viewed millions of times. And post-election, when I started kind of healing and being able to pick up the pieces and researching IBSA and NDII, because all I knew was that I needed to win. So the last 2 months of the election, I just kind of buried myself and put my head in the sand and door knocked all day, every day. Because at that point I was more determined to win than ever, just to show the world, like, hey, you don't get to do this to women, and we sit down, shut up, and go away, which is what they were trying to do. But as I started picking up the pieces and doing research, I realized that I'm not special. People said, well, this is only happening because you ran for office and you were in the public eye. And I knew that wasn't true. But it wasn't until I stopped campaigning and started picking up the pieces and doing research, and had women, not just from across the country, but globally, actually reach out and say, hey, I don't even know if anyone's checking this email address anymore. It was just my generic info at SusannaGibson.com account. I don't know if anyone's checking this email address anymore, but I need help. I don't know what to do. This is happening to me. I can't speak with my family about it. I've tried to go to someone who said they would help me, and I paid them and they didn't really help me. I don't know. Help me. I'm desperate. And it wasn't until I started speaking with a lot of them and doing independent research that I realized, like, I'm not special. This didn't happen to me because I ran for office. This happens to largely women, but not just women, but largely women and LGBTQ plus individuals. These crimes disproportionately target and harm us. And it is everything that happened to me happens. So loss of employment, loss of future employment opportunities. I lost my job as a nurse practitioner because of concerns of my reputation because of this. Breakdown of relationships, social isolation, victim blaming and shaming, PTSD, anxiety, depression. 50% of victims contemplate suicide. I mean, these are crimes of sexual violence, and it's absolutely horrific. And so speaking with these women really kind of changed the trajectory of my life, the course of my life. And I realized that, they need help.
Hmm.
And a lot of them are afraid to be public with their stories. And a lot of them are afraid for their communities to know that they are victims of this type of sexual violence because of the victim blaming and shaming and everything that I just kind of went over. And I figured, you know what, like, my ability, my option to be quiet and silent and not have my community aware of this violence that happened to me, that option has been taken away from me. So how can I best use the voice that I have now to help others who may not have a voice or may not feel comfortable using their voice in that public way? And so we decided to start My Own Image.
Yeah, thank you. And how long has my own image been up and running? Really quick.
So I actually started, originally I started a political action committee Here in the US, elections, candidates usually have to raise their own money, and in competitive seats, it takes quite a bit of money. Political action committees can get involved and help give candidates they support and think would do a good job money during their campaigns to help get them elected. And so I originally started a PAC, my own PAC. It's myownpac.va or myownpacva.org, I believe now, but to support candidates who would kind of actively and aggressively support legislative changes pertaining to sexual violence and NDII and IBSA in particular. And then started the nonprofit side of that in May of 2024. So pretty new, or under a year. And our focus really has been on public education campaigns, educating the public that this is sexual violence, and the harm and the damage that comes from this. And then also legislative changes on state levels here in the United States to
Yeah.
protect violence. Yeah, to protect victims against these types of crimes and then give them recourse. So
Yeah, thank you. So we are on a call, with many advocates, stakeholders, partners, potentially survivors as well. And when this first happened to you, did you know how to get help, where to go to? And could you share a little bit about that?
yeah, no, I had no idea. And I had some of the best political consultants on the East Coast working with me and on my team. I had Emily's List, which here in the US is a large national organization that supports pro choice women running for office. And I had a lot of other national orgs helping me and on my team on my weekly calls. I hired the best crisis and defamation attorney in DC to help fight back against the Washington Post when we were trying to prevent this from being published. And no one knew what to do. No one knew how to help me. And I didn't even know. The day I found out that there were images of me, I had been in clinic, and the reporter had contacted one of my consultants who they knew from previous campaign work and looking for my phone number. And I went home from clinic. I mean, first of all, my heart stopped, like wind knocked out of me. Never felt like that. And was like, all right, how am I going to fix this? What am I going to do? Went home, started Googling immediately. One, is this legal? Is this actually possible that this can be happening? And two, okay, so how do I get these images down? The original reporter who had contacted us and let us know about these images was actually not from the Washington Post. They were from another national news organization, and was a young woman who had young children who I've actually moved, and she is now my neighbor 3 houses down, which is a very small world. Who knew? But she is a young woman and a mother of a kindergartner, and she said, I don't want to go after her. She's a mom. This isn't a story. And so, to her credit, she told us where the links were that had gotten sent to her. And I went home and figured out how to get these images taken down. I started Googling and found out DMCA takedown request is the fastest way. And I went to the links that she had provided to us and I filed those. But yeah, no one knew what to do, where to go. Um, there are a few organizations nationally here in the US that do this work, but really not many,
Mhm.
if at all, and none solely exclusively focus on NDII and IBSA. And so we were just kind of blindly grasping around in the dark, trying to figure out what to do.
Mhm. So your images were shared without your consent, and as two staff members of my own image, we're trying to push for stronger accountability and strengthening the laws around this. And so, do you feel that this criminal act or potential criminal act influenced how the media and the public reacted to your situation and your candidacy?
I think that it's a loaded question. Uh, The interesting thing that I found is that voters in the district actually really didn't care. I won 48.77% of the vote uh, in a what we call here in the US like a R+1 district. So meaning that traditionally the way previous elections have gone, you would expect a Republican candidate to get 51% of the vote and a Democratic candidate to get 49% of the vote, which is basically what happened. Voters really didn't care. I think who did care was, I think, the media. And I think one of the things My Own Image has done is we've created a media guide to really educate the media about how, like, best practices when you are going to cover a story on sexual violence, IBSA, and DII, how best to report on that. So, number one, like, don't mention the particular sites, don't name the sites because all it does is drive more traffic to these sites, which leads to further distribution of non-consensual imagery. Um, and a significant portion of content on user uploaded pornography sites is non-consensual, or it is what we call CSAM, child sexual abuse material, or images that were either made without knowledge or consent, put up without knowledge or consent, or images or material that is made under duress, coercion, extortion. There's a huge overlap with sex trafficking and NDII. And so, educating the media about that in particular is something that is important. I think educating the media and the general public too about, that this is sexual violence and all of the harms that come with this. It's been interesting. Virginia has its legislative session started earlier this week, and it is one of the states that we are running our model policy in and working to amend state criminal code on these. And just having had conversation with some of the legislators who I've known since I was running for office, they have no idea. And so it's been interesting trying to push for, stronger protections. And they say, well, to me, a felony charge is reserved for kind of some of the most horrific crimes. And this just isn't that. Putting a few naked pictures of someone up on the internet is just not that. And it's been really interesting kind of getting to see firsthand the lack of understanding of what these crimes are. So, one, it's a violation of consent and privacy. They are crimes of sexual violence. There have been multiple studies that have come out recently over the past, like, I don't know, since 2017, really, multiple studies showing that the impact, the psychological harm and impact that it has on victims is the same as victims of sexual assault. And, what we now know is that at least 40% of the time that non-consensual images are put up, they're also put up with the victims identifying information and contact information. And so what that does is encourage doxing, which is when personal private information is distributed on the internet on kind of some of these darker websites, or what we call incel sites. And there's also this underground, or maybe not even so underground, but community of not just men, but largely men who share these pictures and images, encourage downloading, sharing, reposting with the sole purpose of quote unquote ruining women and exposing. I guess I probably can't cuss on here, but exposing all blah, 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 beep, 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 beep. And making sure that those images continue to be reposted and shared in perpetuity. And so, really having to educate people about the violence that comes to the victims of these crimes and that it is that serious, it is that significant. It changes the way victims walk around in the world. It changes their sense of safety in the world and their actual safety. We know that 60% of victims of these crimes are stalked online and 40% are stalked offline in person.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna. I do want to highlight there was a recent article that was recent report that was released by the American Sunlight Project, and in that report, from our dear friend of ours as well, Nina Jankowicz. And
Mhm.
so, in that report, it was released that there was an alarming prevalence of AI generated non-consensual imagery for which we call deepfake pornography for everyone on here,
Mhm.
but it targeted members of Congress. And so, what can we do, and what are we doing? Well, what can we do as a society, and what are we doing as my own image to strengthen the laws around these crimes?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we need to do is work on incorporating what in sexual education courses here in the US that start in fourth grade. We need to start incorporating age appropriate education on digital privacy, digital safety, what consent looks like in the digital age, and what sexual violence in the digital world looks like. Our lives are increasingly dependent on technology. And when these crimes occur, it essentially removes the victims from their online life. It makes them shy away from or get off of platforms that are vital for their career advancement or their education because of the online tech facilitated violence that they have to endure when they get on those. So I think it serves to silence and remove women and girls from that part of life and from that career path. And so I think we really need to start educating our society on the harm that comes with these crimes. I think that is first and foremost. You see a lot of victim blaming and shaming. Well, why would you share an image of yourself with your partner? Or why would you think that it is okay to, you know, whatever it may be with a partner or partners, by the way, multiple partners. And you see that also previously with like kind of this rape culture back in the 90s. When I was growing up, it was, well, of course, that woman got sexually assaulted. What did she think was going to happen? She was walking home alone from a bar wearing a short skirt. Of course, that would happen. Why would you do that? And it's, well, no, right? It's this is just that same exact thing, but in the digital world in our modern age. And we have to stop with that. It is never the victim's fault that so much they get assaulted. It is always the perpetrator's fault for choosing to attack and assault them. And I think we really need to do a lot of education with our society and community. What I've found is there seems to be a kind of generational divide. So one of the things I experienced, and I really couldn't understand why during the latter part of my campaign, was the kind of baby boomer age feminists. So women in their 70s, give or take right now, late mid 60s to mid 70s, are the ones that seem to really have the biggest problem with me or what they think I did. Again, that story is inaccurate, but it's really neither here nor there. No one deserves to be treated no matter what they do or did. Um, but it's been interesting trying to understand why they are so upset and why they are so angry with me. And post election, doing research, it's because of this uh, the age that they are. You saw what we call a second wave or radical feminism was that kind of generation of feminism in the 70s, which is when the baby boomers were really kind of coming into their sexual age and exploring sexuality. And that radical feminism, second wave feminism, is anti-sex, anti-sex work, anti-pornography. Sex is a tool of the patriarchy. And it seems to have really deeply penetrated their understanding of sexuality and have this really deeply ingrained misogyny. And so I think education is probably the most important thing we can do. We can't stop technology, right? Here in the US, First Amendment, right to free speech, we can't stop someone from creating an image. It's a First Amendment violation, but you can stop them from distributing these images, right? That is not your First Amendment right. And so I think education so that if these images continue to get put up of women in Congress, women running for office, that they are not victim and blamed and shamed. It is how dare that perpetrator do that to that person. That is sexual violence.
Yeah, for everyone here, no consent, no sharing, period. That's our motto, and we're hoping to change that. Susanna, where's my own image going? What are we doing right now? How many states are we in? And how are we going to move forward?
Yeah, so we created model policy for states on NDII. Here in the US, there's no federal criminal law that prohibits the non-consensual distribution of intimate images. There were two bills that were going through Congress this past year that unfortunately did not make it through, but are going to get reintroduced. The Take It Down Act and the Shield Act. Even if they pass, um, you still have to find a federal prosecutor willing to prosecute those crimes, and most are not going to take the time to do that. So it's going to come down to states. Each state in the US right now has different laws. Some are good, some are terrible, some are mediocre. And so when you're creating or strengthening laws, the kind of biggest obstacle and hurdle, organization and group that you have to overcome and do a lot of education with is the criminal justice reform community, who typically does not like creating new crimes. And so knowing that, on my own image, we brought on two criminal justice reform policy experts, who I happen to know one of them through running for office. And the two of them and myself, created this model policy for states. And so we have gone around and talked to legislators in several states this year, our first year without funding, by the way, which is pretty impressive. We are running it in 7 states. So we are working in Idaho, Arkansas, Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, New Jersey, and South Carolina, which is the only state here in the US without any law on the books criminalizing NDII. And we are creating South Carolina's very first NDII law, which is something I'm very proud of. Yeah. So, yep, that's what we're doing and working on. And we're also working on public education campaigns. I think next year I'm planning on working on sex education and developing curriculum and pushing for state laws requiring that. And then also continuing our work with the public and community advocacy and education piece.
Yeah, impactful work that we're doing, and that should emphasize with no funding. So if anyone's listening, please send money our way. But you know me, so I can't not say that. But yes, we are. As we look forward, we're trying to uh, really make this a national discussion, that these crimes, a digital assault is still assault. And we want to make sure that people are aware of this, that there's policies to strengthening this impact on survivors, and they're aware of how they can get help, and to ensure that advocates can access resources, can be adequately trained, can train others. And so our hope is that we can become a national organization that is geared towards and the lead for this work. And so we're working very hard with our team to pass these laws. Susanna just said those 7 states, but what she doesn't know is I'm talking to about 10 other ones at the same time. And so we're out there. We're going to make some change and really provide the strengthening that survivors need. So Susanna, this has been an amazing conversation. Is there anything, final remarks that you would love to share with people listening in?
The only thing I would say is, 1 in 3 women here in the US have been uh, threatened with or had their images shared non-consensually. And if that is you, and if you don't know where to turn to, if you need resources that you can trust, because there are a lot of bad actors out there, that people who say they will help you take your money and then just re-victimize you. Please feel free to reach out. You can email info@myownimage.org. You can email will@myownimage.org, or me personally, Susanna Gibbs, or Susanna@myownimage.org. But please feel free to reach out, and we'll be able to connect you to resources that we know will help you and that we trust, that I've personally used. because it is, you do feel kind of lost in the middle of the sea with nowhere to land. So
Yeah, thank you again, Susanna, for sharing, these intimate crimes and your experience, and really having a discussion on that. And we hope that those out there, like you said, who need help, we're here. We're always here. And please reach out. You can find us at our emails that Susanna just shared. We're both on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn as well. And so please reach out to us, collaborations, ideas, even if you need help, we're here to help you. We're both advocates wanting to make a change. It's a pleasure meeting with everyone here today. Thank you to No More for this opportunity to talk more about Susanna and my own. And we appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your summit.